Welcome very much to Conversations, where it's a pleasure to welcome to the program Professor William Baumol. He was a professor currently at New York University of Economics and has an illustrious career, and it's an honor, sir, to welcome you to Conversations and to Manhattan Network.
It is my great pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, New York University kindly provided two bios on you, one of which is a summary, which we're going to read here now, and then the other one was just eye-poppingly impressive in terms of the honorary degrees and so forth. But if you may, I'll read the first short bio of him. He was born February 26 in 1922 in New York City. He received his BSS at the College of the City of New York in 1942 and his PhD at the University of London in 1949. His honors and awards includes, it says 7 honorary degrees, but I know as we spoke it's now 9, having just received one from, I believe, Princeton and the University of Jerusalem recently.
The Hebrew University.
Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He's the presidency of the American Economic Association, 2 other professional societies, and membership in the National Academy of Sciences. He has served on many boards and committees, and the list of boards and committees that he has served on is incredibly extensive. He's a professor of economics and director of the C.V. Starr Center for Applied Economics at New York University and professor emeritus at Princeton University, where I believe you served something like 40-odd years you were involved.
42 years.
Congratulations.
Yes.
And Dr. Baumol is the author of numerous, I believe 30 books and over 500 articles published in professional journals, and that's just a brief summary, and welcome once again very, very much to Conversations. An honor to welcome you here.
Thank you so much. You know, Adlai Stevenson once said,
yes,
after that kind of introduction, I can hardly wait to hear myself speaking.
Okay, well, and that was the abridged. We had a longer one that they had, and it is really indeed. You had an incredibly illustrious career, and I am very pleased that you could be here. Well, that's a summary of it. I wonder maybe you could share. You were born in New York, and you're a New Yorker, born and bred, but you've spent a lot of time at Princeton, and maybe you could share a little of your own background in a personal sense. Then we could talk some about the economics as you see it now and some of the unique understandings of economics that you see in terms of the way markets and competition can be understood as we think now in the year 1999. But maybe your own background, please.
Well, as you said, I was born and grew up in the toughest parts of New York City, and then after military service in World War II, I decided that it was time to see something of the rest of the world, so my wife and I moved to England for 3 years, where I attended the London School of Economics. Then returned to my job at Princeton, where with stubborn persistency I held on for this ridiculous amount of time. And incidentally, just to add a scandalous side issue, I also taught sculpture there for 20 years.
No fooling, really. You were in the
Absolutely.
arts. Yeah. I know you're involved with the theater, aren't you? And
yes, no, but I was trained as a painter and a sculptor, and I gave courses in the subject at Princeton for a long time.
Good for you. You didn't happen to have known Mr. Noguchi, did you, by any chance?
No,
no,
but I am a great admirer of his work.
Have you been to the museum?
Oh, yes.
I was there the other day. It's really beautiful.
Oh, yes. I think every viewer of this program should rush to go see it.
Amen. I'll second that for sure. Yeah. Well, congratulations on that. I hadn't realized that wasn't in your bio. It was sent over from NYU, but
they tried to keep the more sinful aspects out of it.
Tried to keep that out of it, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so but you did economics at the London School, then, is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. And is that part of the University of London, or?
Yes, it is.
Oh, it is. I see. That's where it's the University of London. And you were schooled in. Is it fair to say you were schooled in what they call microeconomics, or?
That's right.
And maybe you could spell out what we mean when we say microeconomics and macroeconomics.
Yes, certainly. Microeconomics looks at the economy in detail, the behavior of individual firms, the behavior of individual consumers.
Okay.
And so in one sense, we see things that someone looking at the economy through a telescope from Mars would not see, because we're looking at each little detail.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's called microeconomics.
So-
we are
so-
looking at it through a microscope,
Sort of like quantum mechanics.
a little
Maybe, yeah.
analogous
Yeah.
to it.
Uh-huh.
Whereas macroeconomics, which in a sense is the invention of Lord Keynes, puts things together, looks at the big picture from a distance, and so can more easily reach conclusions about big movements, what is happening to unemployment as a whole, what is happening to inflation as a whole. But there is a price. I mean, each has its virtues and its vices. The microeconomics can hope to tell you how we can stimulate the growth of innovation in a particular firm. Why, when the Bell system was broken up, it was predictable that Bell Labs would be transformed. That is something a macroeconomist does not do, but we cannot do what they do, and that is to look at these huge major movements of the economy.
I see. Are there not borrowings between them, and one would relate one to the other, and you would have good conversations over coffee with one another and so forth?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, the work I'm
Yeah.
currently doing, which is on growth of the economy,
Yes.
is in some sense a little of both, because I am talking about the growth of output of income in the economy as a whole, not of any particular firm or any particular individual.
I see, yeah. If we were to look back over has this been a distinction? Is this an important distinction, micro and macro, in terms of understanding economics? Has this been a distinction that's been in the economic profession, as it were, for a long time? I'm sorry asking this question. Is it an important one for the layman to understand the difference between a microeconomist and a macroeconomic view?
Yes, it is very important
Okay.
to understand. It hasn't been in the profession officially
Yeah.
for a long time. And the profession, it goes back to the 1930s and the work of Lord Keynes and others who were producing associated ideas in Sweden and in the United States and in other places where work on the urgent problems raised by the Great Depression really forced our attention to move to the big current issues, which was the disappearance of jobs, the collapse of income, the collapse of production.
Yes.
And that was a job for macroeconomics.
I see.
But today, we have problems, happily not nearly as serious as the problems of the 30s, but we have problems that call for both of these issues. For example,
Yes.
we see in the newspapers every day about the Microsoft antitrust trial.
Absolutely.
And that is a pure issue in microeconomics.
Now that's microeconomics, although it has implications for everyone in this society. And microeconomics, although it would look at one industry or one company, does have implications for the whole society. That it's good for the layman to understand, right?
Exactly right.
Maybe you could talk to that the Microsoft issue
Oh, it
as
is.
a microeconomic kind of concern.
Yes, and I can tell you
Yes.
that the two chief witnesses on the opposite sides are both friends of mine.
Oh, well, okay, that's good.
And I can also tell you that I have not reached an opinion as to which side is basically right.
Well, okay, you're the judge in this case, or you are the judge in this case of
Or
judging
the
your mind.
cop-out,
Or the
as,
cop-out, right.
as the case may be.
But you think the case does talk to what microeconomics is about in terms of that?
Oh, absolutely.
And
In
also
fact,
to this paper that you have that's about innovation, which is something we're going to want to talk about. But yeah.
yes. But you see, the two economists on both,
Yes.
on the two chief economists on the opposite sides of the case, who incidentally are colleagues at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
They're both in the same department?
They're in the same department, and they are very friendly.
Yes,
and I respect the integrity of each of them. Have used standard microeconomics to form their analysis and have reached their conclusions.
Diametrically opposed.
Well,
is it fair to say? Or
it's not diametrically opposed, because the basis for the analysis is the same. But the issues are really novel here.
Okay.
See, one of the issues, for example, that is implicit is whether Microsoft is engaging in what is called in the business predatory behavior.
Okay.
And predatory behavior is usually defined to mean doing something in which the firm that engages in it loses money on, in the hope that this will force competitors out of the business, and so that they will afterwards be able to raise their prices to monopoly levels and gain back all their lost profits from the period of predatory behavior.
Yeah, and microeconomics has been concerned with price.
Oh, very much.
Very much core of their thing. And there are examples from history that we can draw upon to show that kind of thing has happened in the historical model?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, let me give you a very critical example, of a different sort.
Okay.
We all know the story about George Washington's horrible winter in Valley Forge.
Of course. Yeah.
And I can tell you
Yes.
that the reason that his troops were ill-fed, ill-clad, ill-housed,
Yes.
to use Roosevelt's phrase,
Yes.
was bad pricing.
No, really. Yeah.
Absolutely
That's what
true.
It was? Yeah.
What was happening, and there are many historic examples of this, is that the farmers were smuggling food to his army through the British lines, a risky business, as you can imagine, and charging hefty prices for it, until the authorities decided that this was immoral, passed rules prohibiting the payment of those prices, and guess what happened? The farmers decided it wasn't worth the risk of getting shot by the British, and the food supply dried up. So
There's it, yeah.
there is an example of microeconomics in action.
I mentioned it under my breath, Standard Oil, and some of the policies of forcing competition or underpricing and so forth. Is that another example? There were many examples
There
like that.
were examples like that,
And
yes.
the microeconomics will study that in particular detail and understand it in particular detail. And you said I thought I heard you say that there's something unique about the situation of information technology or the Microsoft, and there's this concept that they will get a new technology in a certain sense locked in to where it won't allow for innovation the way it would allow to benefit the society overall.
Well, that's not clear, but let me show you where the dilemma arises. You see, once you've created a new program, an internet searching device, or an operating system, then replicating it, manufacturing it for individual consumers costs pennies.
Yes, that's right.
Virtually zero.
Right. It was all in the R&D.
So there is virtually no price so low that it fails to cover costs, which means that in that case, what constitutes predatory pricing, has to be looked at in a very different way than in a case where, this is purely imaginary,
Yes.
Ford Motor Company decided to destroy Toyota or General Motors by selling cars at 50% below the cost of producing them. You see, with Microsoft, that just isn't possible.
I see, yeah. Yeah.
And so you have to explore what constitutes predation in a new light.
I see, yeah. And does it come into effect, though? Because we just saw this Thomas Friedman has this new book out, The Lotus, or the Lexus and the Olive Tree, and the globalization process, which seems to be moving into bringing new patterns in terms of what it is between nations, the competition between nations and that sort of thing. Is that something that could be looked at in a microeconomic prism that would give understanding to the, predatory practices or that sort of thing between nations?
Certainly, but there again, there are micro and macro aspects to the story.
Okay, right, yeah.
You see, one of the big effects of the globalization process is that the dangers of monopoly in most industries that danger has to a considerable extent evaporated, because General Motors, which primarily used to face the competition of Ford and Studebaker and Chrysler, now faces the competition of Volvo and Toyota and Mazda and the whole market of the world.
And this is something in a certain, we've always had East India, we had trade, we had some trade, but it's coming in a new kind of way that we call globalization now, and it's also facilitated by telecommunications or communications, which has vastly expanded the possibility of linking it together, what Marshall McLuhan called a global village. But the transportation of things, or atoms, as Negroponte will say, rather than bits of information, but atoms, there's been a revolution in transportation that made this new kind of pattern possible in a qualitative new way or something? Or is it just an extension of what has always been there, but it's just more of it now?
No, to some degree, Hegel and Marx used to talk of the transformation of quantitative into qualitative.
That's right, yeah, right.
And that's what's going on here.
I see, okay, that's interesting, yeah, thanks.
Communication is getting cheaper and transportation are getting cheaper and cheaper and faster and faster.
Containerization.
Well, but more than that.
Yes, sir.
I mean, you can get a group of innovators in Silicon Valley getting a new idea and deciding that to put it to work, you need a box into which it will fit. They can send an email to their subsidiary in India, get the Indian technicians to produce the blueprints, and those blueprints will be there the next morning.
Right, yeah, right, yeah.
And that was
not possible in Tom Jefferson's day.
That's right.
It took 3 months on a packet ship or something, yeah.
That's right. The point is that until recently, international trade was almost exclusively goods, not services, because services in some sense are difficult to transport, but now they are transported instantaneously. Computer services, designs, or look at television.
Yeah,
you see,
here we are.
In the old days, the London Symphony Orchestra would come to New York, but that was a major cost and a major undertaking. Groups would move from country to country, but now the television programs are broadcast instantaneously throughout the world.
That's right, and now they're starting to stream, as they call it, onto the internet with multimedia, sound and video.
Exactly.
And it's some new kind of world we're coming into, perhaps.
I'll tell you something.
Yes, sir, do.
The
You already
arti-
have, but more.
Yes, the article in the New York Times which led you to get hold of me
Grand
the other
article.
week,
Yeah, it was really well done. Yeah.
well, I was in Jerusalem when that came out,
Yes.
and I assumed I would not see it till I returned a week later.
Right.
That evening, at a party, 2 different people brought me the article in color.
All right.
They had taken it off the internet,
Yeah.
and incidentally, my photograph, which appears in the Times in black and white,
Yes.
was in color
No!
on the internet.
Oh, my Lord. Yeah,
So
Lord.
you see,
My
the
God.
speed.
Living color, huh?
And
yeah.
the very next day,
Yeah.
the article was brought to me in Hebrew.
Now,
in the
been translated.
It'd been translated.
Might have been through a
and
translating machine, maybe. It
and
might have been.
No doubt, and
It's
was in
something.
the local newspaper.
I would have asked you that because we talk now, and there's a great deal of talk now, whether or not we've had this, and we've talked to some about your colleague or a friend, Robert Heilbronner, who's written on the worldly philosophers and so forth, and that it began with Adam Smith in a certain sense in the new pattern. And we've had this economics profession developing and a study of it with the great economists, you know, of the past. But now people are talking in new kind of ways about the information environment that's emerging, information economy. Does that bring something into the equation of economics that in a certain sense begins to differentiate us from the traditional patterns of understanding economics that we've got over the centuries? Or is it an extension of that? Or how do you see the implications of the information technologies? Sometimes some people talk about it as the philosopher's stone that we've finally arrived at or something. But could you put that in some perspective for us?
Well, again,
Yeah.
it's something that is revolutionary,
Yes.
obviously so, and should not be denigrated, and is changing things in ways that might have been unimaginable a century ago. Just think of what has happened to the labor force. In Washington's day, approximately 90% of the labor force was engaged in agriculture.
Yeah. Until very recently, even,
That's
I think.
right.
Yeah.
Today, that 90% is about 2.5%.
That's right. And feed the world. as they
That's
call it.
right.
Yeah.
From agriculture, the workers moved into manufacturing. But labor-saving technology has begun to eat into the number of jobs offered into manufacturing.
Right.
Not by destroying jobs, but by transferring, just as the jobs were transferred from agriculture to manufacturing in the last century, they have now been transferred from manufacturing to the services. And I don't mean the services of hamburger flipping and dishwashing.
That's part of it.
That's part of it. But the bulk of the new jobs are in the information sector, and estimates are that about 60% of the labor force in the United States is engaged in jobs that are in some sense related to the information sector. So there is a revolution indeed. And it means that the workers need more education than they used to have. And in fact, one of the things that's happening in the past 2 decades is that the payoff to a college education relative to what you can get by, say, if you're a high school dropout, has zoomed. So that whereas 20 years ago, there was a modest differential, a modest payoff to going to college, that payoff has gone up steadily and substantially.
I see, yeah.
So there's another example of a consequence of the information age.
I see. So the information age, that's a sense like I was from Detroit, and the automobile industry loomed large there, and they were coming from all over the country to come into the automobile factories of Mr. Ford and General Motors and so forth. And they did that, and now they're going into these and is it true to say, if we, maybe it's not fair for me to ask, if it isn't, we'll go on to something else, but that our basic policy grounding statement as far as the nation is concerned is the Employment Act of 1946, or am I off base on that?
Well, I guess that is the
It's-
last general law or piece of legislation to guide the economy as a whole.
Yeah, for our policy set, our leaders,
Yes,
and
yes. I
and
mean,
it essentially says that we would aim. I think it was going to try and be called at one time the Full Employment Act
That's
of
right.
1946, but it generally is that we want to aim toward the degree that we can without inflation and that sort of thing to to employment of the labor resources of our economy in order to have it function well, and we're certainly at that point now in a new kind of dimension. 4.2%, a sustained growth. It's like so success. Does it seem to you like we're at an unprecedented kind of successful stage as we sit and talk in June of 1999?
it certainly is unprecedented to have this long a period of high employment and no inflation.
Mm-hmm.
We've had previous periods in which things like that have gone on, but
Mhm.
this is really spectacular.
I see.
But in some sense, we've been having technological breakthroughs since the beginning of the 19th century,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and we've seen no trends towards increased unemployment.
Okay. Okay. I wonder, maybe we could back up to the beginning of the art. You're writing a book now. The title, it escapes me at the moment, but the title...
It escapes you because it doesn't exist.
Oh, I thought you had a title to the
And
working paper. Or
It may be.
Yeah.
but,
Okay, it's a working title. But anyway, you're in the process of writing a book. And among other things that you do is you say, you address the incredible growth that that accompanied the capitalist system in the more modern era, and that you had a sentence where you said that for 1,500 years from the end of the Roman Empire, the growth rate of the Western economy was approximately 0.
That is correct.
Maybe you could address that and put it into perspective, just how much of the prosperity or growth has just been an event of these last relatively, a couple hundred years or something.
Well, let me just give you one figure, which is that per capita income today
Mm-hmm.
is approximately 10 times as high as it was a century ago.
A century ago.
Now,
huh?
that's a number I defy you
Mm-hmm.
to try and figure out what it means. I
Yeah.
can't, and I've done a lot of research.
You
mean,
certainly
imagine
Yeah.
every American family having 1/10 the purchasing power
Uh-huh.
that it has today.
Yes, right.
Can you imagine
Yeah,
how
it'd be
they
disa-
lived?
Yeah, it'd be
I
yeah.
mean, I can give you hints. I
Yeah.
can tell you that the prevailing dinner consisted of one bowl of food that
Yeah.
was passed around the table.
Yeah.
That when people died, they left one suit of clothing.
Yes, right.
That they spent 95% of their income on food, clothing, and shelter. There was no such thing as a vacation.
Uh-huh.
You worked 6 days a week. You
Yeah.
worked 12 hours a day.
Uh-huh. And
we-
wallowed around in the mud of poverty for the most part for the greatest number of people.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
do you know that in the 19th century...
Grinding poverty, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
in the 19th century, it was considered normal in the homes for ink to freeze in the inkwell
Oh,
every
really?
winter.
Really made it a little hard to do for the scribbling class.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean,
yeah.
What has happened
yeah.
is that per capita income has gone up not 100%, but something like 1,000%.
Yes. In you say
in a century.
in one century since 1900.
That's right.
Incredible.
When in
Yeah. The invention
15
of electric-
centuries, it did not grow at all.
Why? Why did it not, and
Well-
why has it? This
well,
is a question you're concerned with. That's what your paper's concerned with.
That's
and more
right.
importantly, how can we keep it going, or how can we get it going even faster, or why?
Well, I
Please.
think that's first of all, let me emphasize
Yeah.
that is the great question that has not been addressed in a systematic way by economists since the beginning of the century. There were 2 economists who dealt with it. One was Karl Marx,
Yes.
and the other was Joseph Schumpeter.
All right, good.
Now, the thing
We
to
brought
be
Mr. Schumpeter's book in that people maybe they could even show it. This is a book that's worth letting people know about because it's not as well known as it should be.
That's right.
Joseph Schumpeter, and it's, again, Capitalism, Socialism, and Democracy, a monumental work. This is the third edition. I think it was in, this is the third edition around 1950 or something it came out.
Yes.
Yeah. But anyways, but he's, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
But what people
Karl Marx
don't...
and Schumpeter more than Karl Marx and Keynes.
Oh, absolutely. Keynes didn't deal with this
Yeah,
issue.
okay.
Karl Marx, who was, of course, a hater of capitalism, at the same time was its greatest publicity agent.
Great admirer of the productivity of it.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, in the Communist Manifesto written by him and Engels in 1847, he has phrases that are almost poetic about the spectacular accomplishments of the capitalist system, which have produced wonders that are unprecedented in history, according to Marx.
True to say, it was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just getting started.
And just getting started.
Yeah.
And so here we have an economy, a form of economic organization, which has all sorts of shortcomings. It brings depressions, it brings inequality, it can harm the environment. I'm not here as a propagandist for the free enterprise economy because it has, like any other type of economy, its shortcomings. But its incredible virtue, which makes it the envy of all the non-capitalist world.
And that which they're trying to understand.
That's right. Yeah. Which led to the collapse of communism, which led China to adopt capitalist methods of production, though retaining its undemocratic form of political system, is the incredible ability of the capitalist system to produce, to grow economically, to raise standards of living to heights that were never dreamed of in human history.
Why was it able to do that? And I make note of the fact that you said of China democracy. Is it possible to have capitalism within, is there a linking between capitalism and somehow and democracy? Can you have a political democracy but not a economic democracy? And
I'm not a political scientist, so I can I can claim the Fifth Amendment.
Okay.
But
well said. But what is the miracle that made it so possible? Some people would say it was just chance and necessity, or just happened or something. But what is it about it that? And it's only a couple hundred years old at the best that we can think of the capitalist market system, right? Yeah.
But it can't be an accident because it goes on year after year. You look at the record of innovations, you know. Cotton gin, steam engine, all the inventions of the early industrial revolution.
Yes.
Then you look at the end of the 19th century, electric power, AC, DC.
Electricity itself.
Electricity
only 100 years
itself.
old, a little bit, you know, but a little more. Yeah.
Aviation, internal combustion engine, et cetera, et cetera.
So was this the result of capitalism, or was it just that it happened and then capitalism
No, it's
cashed in on
clearly
it, you know?
Capitalism plays a key role because capitalism, in my view, and I think this fits in with both Schumpeter and Marx, is a pitiless war of business firms to stay ahead of one another.
Okay.
That, in other words, competition.
Yes, right, competition.
But what they really can use to win the battle is not a slightly lower price or a little better advertising, but a new product, a better product,
innovation,
a revolutionary product, and a new process that enables you to make that product more cheaply, more reliably, more effectively. And that, as you have just said, is innovation.
Yeah, invention and innovation.
That's right.
And it comes out of a certain kind of a sociological set that allows this to happen. We had in the arts, we had certain periods, we had the Renaissance, we had certain periods that were blooming periods. There were times for long. Is there a comparison to that? There's a condition that allows for this inventiveness and also the innovation. It's important that they be implemented, because
That's
inventions, like in ancient China, they had inventions of paper and so forth, but they didn't have a commercial way of building wealth on it. And we're interested in the creation of and forward movement and expansion of wealth. The theory of wealth creation
That's
is
right.
important, or value, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Both in China and in ancient Rome, they had wonderful inventions.
Yes.
The Romans invented a steam engine,
No fooling. I didn't realize.
but they
yeah.
only used it to close and open a temple door.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
No, the reason is very simple.
Uh-huh.
In Rome and in China of the Middle Ages, the pursuit of wealth was a very honorable activity. But there were honorable ways to get it and disgraceful ways. Honorable ways included military aggression, bribery, ransom, usury. Those were all honorable.
Those were honorable, right?
But
Okay.
production and commerce was a disgrace.
Oh, I see. I understand. Okay. Okay. Right.
So that
Interesting.
you got the Romans carrying out wonderful military innovations, roads that over which they could march armies, aqueducts with which they could keep water supplies for the armies. But things that would raise the production level, that was for slaves to work on.
I see. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, right. That's because it was. Yeah, there was that. They were there at the end of the Roman. Anyway, that's really. And so the growth is it's almost incalculable. The progress in that certain sense, in terms of material progress, that has been attended in these last couple hundred years or so.
That's
and to
right.
understand that is what we are concerned with.
Exactly.
Mr. Schumpeter shine particular light on this. Do you think, if I may, I don't want to intrude here or something, but you said you had not read in your article that you had not read Schumpeter for some 40 years in your illustrious career, when you found his quote about, Macbeth without Hamlet. That was kind of interesting and so forth. But has he been overlooked, do you think, by the economists, much less by the general society, as somebody that we should understand if we want to try and understand the realities of economics today?
He was always honored as an icon.
Okay, okay.
But people, until recently, had not built on his work.
Why? They had built on Keynes?
Well,
Mr. Nixon said we're all Keynesians now in 1971.
Well, in part that was because the Great Depression was the primary concern of the world, not just economists. And economists, quite rightly and justifiably, were driven to move their attention away from the issue of economic growth and towards the creation of jobs.
Or in distribution.
Well, it was mostly the creation of jobs.
Well, that was a way to distribute, no?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
yes.
In a certain, because of Say's law, was supply should create its own demand. But But Schumpeter, what was his take, as we would say in modern parlance, and what does it set him apart, and where does he fit in, and why was there not models or practical application of his thinking to the degree that maybe there should have been, and maybe there is now in many people's mind, and that we should understand?
Well, I count 4 questions.
Oh, sorry.
So I'll try to get to them one at a time.
Sorry.
No,
Sorry.
I'm teasing.
Yeah, I know.
I can't
Okay,
resist
thank you, sir.
But there were 2 takes of Schumpeter, both valuable. The first one described the innovation process in the earlier stage of capitalism in a book that he wrote in the first decade of the century, in which he said that the way innovation worked is that inventors would enter an industry as entrepreneurs, be able to outcompete those who are still providing the old products or using the old processes.
In a sort of routinized way?
No, that's the second stage.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
And then the competitors would be forced to imitate or to produce counter innovations, and so there would be temporary profits to the innovator, the initial innovator. Then as others caught up, those innovations would disappear.
But he sang the praises of the entrepreneur, and if I'm not sure, may have
absolutely.
resurrected that word from the what Marshall McLuhan might have called the rag and bone shop of history. He got that term that hadn't been widely used, or am I wrong?
It was used.
It was, yeah.
Actually, it was probably invented by J.B. Say.
Oh, really?
John
Say, right? Really, yeah.
And it had been used by others.
Okay.
But in any
But
event,
he breathed life into it and sang the praises of it, did he not?
That's right.
Yeah.
But the point is that in this early study, the inventor was still the inventor of legend, working in an attic in a garage, shouting "Eureka" when the first version of the invention really did work.
Don Amici.
Absolutely.
That's right. Yeah.
So, yes, we're old enough to remember when they called the telephone an Amici because...
Yes, that's right.
But
But Edison, I was from Detroit. Edison was a creative genius. But anyway, I'm sorry.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
I didn't mean to break.
No problem. Yeah. That's the way conversations work.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yes. But what happened is that because in the innovation process is basically an arms race between or among firms rather than building tanks, guns, and airplanes as nations do.
That's interesting.
The firms in their arms race invest in R&D laboratories, hire technicians, scientists, etc. That is, they could not take the risk that someone in an attic somewhere would bring them the right invention. And as Schumpeter of the 1940s recognized, the firms being unwilling to take chances in this arms race began to routinize and bureaucratize the innovation process.
Itself, right?
That's
routinize and bureaucratize creativity.
That's correct.
That's interesting, yeah, right, okay, yeah.
That is...
And that's going on now.
That's going on now.
Right.
Big business will make, at the same time, the decision as to how much to invest in advertising, how much to invest in plant and equipment, and how much to invest in R&D.
R&D, and if they come up with in the traditional way of thinking, there would be competition between them, R&D, development. Innovation is very important to production gains and so forth, is very important, but it becomes too risky for them to be alone in that process, so they will set up patterns of licensing and agreement between them that if someone discovers a new thing, they will be able to license it at a set fee, so there's a certain built-in cooperation between the people that are within an industry, let's say. Is that something that is not taken into account as much as it ought to be by
That's
our
correct.
thinking? Yeah.
In fact, the cooperation can take two forms. One is research joint ventures, where several firms get together and say, let's set up a laboratory. We're all looking for a way to prevent light from leaking into a camera or whatever it is. And it will benefit all of us if there is a breakthrough on that score. So let's all invest $10 million in setting up this lab, and we will all have rights to the innovation that comes out of that.
Is this similar to cartel, or how do we deal with it? Or I mean, and you're a consultant to major corporations in our economy, so you understand this well. Is it like a cartelization process, or how do we think of it? Or is it like, you know, I don't know, what do they call them, these things where you have swaps and derivatives, or some sort of a way of getting rid of risks,
Well,
risk avoidance, or?
Oh, but the answer to that is that cooperation
Cooperation, yeah.
can sometimes be very harmful to the public interest and sometimes very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give you two illustrations.
All right.
If General Motors and Ford were the only producers of automobiles, to make it simple,
Well,
and
in
they
Detroit,
got
it used to only be three.
That's
you
right.
know, you know.
Or if
there
the
were
three
many
of-
at the turn of the or
Sure.
you know, the teens and 20s.
Absolutely.
Anyway, go
But
ahead.
suppose there were only three,
All right.
and they got together and said, let's decide on price jointly.
Yes.
You can be pretty confident that that price would be a hell of a lot higher than if they were fighting one another in the pricing
Or
process.
if there was competition from overseas, which is a new
Whichever,
wrinkle.
sure.
Yeah, whichever. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
So in the case of pricing
Mm-hmm.
with coordination by horizontal competitors, that
Right,
is
right.
competitors who are producing the same product,
Right. Or in the same
It-
field. Yeah.
it is clearly against the public interest.
Uh-huh.
And that's why the courts have rightly considered price fixing,
Mm-hmm.
that is, the deciding of price jointly by horizontal competitors, to be illegal per se. There is no excuse. There are no extenuating circumstances.
The market must be free for competition. Would it be free for open entry or for limited entry, or
Whichever, but
Yeah.
as long as...
makes a difference?
It makes a difference,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
But as long as Ford and Chrysler and General Motors do not call one another up and say, you know, enough of this foolish competition, why don't we double our prices? I'll do it if you do it.
What if they say that on the 16th green, playing golf or something?
It's still illegal.
All right. Okay.
And they can
Yeah.
still go to jail for it and be fined heavily and so on.
Okay, and that's
It is
concentrated.
illegal per se.
That's interesting, and that's in the area of price, which is what microeconomics has really been focusing on largely. But now there comes up in your paper, you're saying this innovative process, or the process of is one that is very much more perhaps important in terms of creation of wealth and so forth, and it's been overlooked more than it should be in terms of what how the economy is going to be organized.
That's true, but the point also is,
Yeah.
what you said is correct,
Mhm.
but also this is a field in which cooperation can sometimes improve the results, can sometimes help to get you new products and new processes where uncoordinated efforts might not get them. And as a result, throughout the world, the antitrust authorities who allow no cooperation on pricing
Yes, right.
have rarely intervened when there has been cooperation on innovation.
Interesting. And what is your take, as we say, on that we should understand this, first of all, and where would our understanding appropriately lead us in the common wheel?
Well, the answer is our understanding should indicate that there is a danger. The danger is that three firms in an industry that are cooperating on innovation could conceivably say, look, why should we take those risks and work so hard? I won't turn out any new products if you don't turn out any new products.
Stacy's, yeah?
That could happen.
Okay, yeah.
And that, of course, would clearly not be in the public interest.
Nor would it be in the interest of understanding growth and the theory of growth and that we were talking about how successful we've been in these last couple hundred years. We want to understand that and encourage that, because a growing economy is the best thing for people at all levels of society.
That's
is a
right.
growing and expanding economy.
Exactly.
Okay, so we want to make sure we don't discourage that.
That's right.
Okay.
On the other hand, as has been happening in practice, if IBM meets with Hitachi, as it does.
It does, yes.
Openly.
You say they do it, yeah.
Yeah.
On
And
this innovation question.
on the innovation
Research,
question,
R&D,
on the
yeah. And they share.
And IBM says, I will let you have every innovation in, say, computer screens that we come up with in the next 5 years, if you let us have every innovation you come up with in the next 5 years. But
Through a licensing arrangement?
through a licensing arrangement.
Right, and that's very common.
That's very common, but
Yeah.
it's much trickier.
All
than
right,
that.
yeah, I suppose it would be with those guys.
Because
Hmm.
IBM has bigger labs than Hitachi,
Right.
so IBM is likely to come up with more and more valuable innovations in the next 5 years than Hitachi does.
Right, right.
So what happens in these negotiations is that Hitachi will say, I recognize, this is all made up, but this
Yeah, I
is
understand. It's a scenario.
it's
yeah,
a scenario.
Yeah.
Hitachi representatives will say, we recognize that your expected innovations will be more valuable than ours, so we will not only give you our innovations, but we will pay you $30 million for an equalization fee.
Okay, and that.
And IBM will say, that's ridiculous. $30 million isn't nearly
So they'll
enough.
negotiate.
Ours is worth at least 70 million
I
more.
see, and they'll negotiate.
And they'll negotiate over
And
that.
they begin to get some idea of, and does it balance out? And that's
Well, it's
oh.
more than that.
Yeah.
You see, that means that to come out ahead in this negotiation, you have to come to the table
Yeah,
with a rich menu of prospective innovation.
that's right. That's true.
You
That's
can't
true.
come there
It's
and
to your
say,
interest, right.
I haven't got anything.
I got nothing to bring. I got no.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that form of negotiation ensures a very powerful stimulus for each firm to work as hard as it can to not only to be first with the innovation, but to have more innovations to bring to the bargaining table.
And that can contribute to growth and to the creation of value.
Exactly,
And-
and does.
yeah,
Not only can, but it does very materially.
Now, where does that bring us in with Mr. Schumpeter?
Well,
Or how would he view this?
I think he would view this as a natural development of the free market economies.
Okay, I think we might just say that he did say that he think that capitalism could survive, and he said in the long run he thought it could not
That's
because
right.
of the tendency to routinize the whole process.
But he did not.
Am I correct in that?
That is correct.
Yeah.
But what he did not see, and who of us can claim that we can foresee the future?
Yeah.
What he did not foresee is that the routinization, instead of undercutting the growth process, would become one of its mainstays. As I've just described it. What I was describing had nothing to do with the genius innovator in a garage.
No, I understand that, yeah.
This was a description of the battle among the firms in the computer industry.
So are we at this point, with you, with your rich background, I appreciate it, are we in good territory when we pick up and read now to try and understand things, Mr. Schumpeter? Is there something new coming? Is there a variation on him? Or where do we go in order to get a sense of philosophical underpinning to understanding both policy leaders or intellectually interested people, the direction in which this whole interrelated spaceship Earth should be trying to trend in order to maximize the economic process to the benefit of the whole human society?
Well, there's a group of economists, very brilliant and very creative, who are studying the growth process. Robert Solow, who
Yes.
won the Nobel
Yes.
Prize for his work in the arena, Paul Romer,
Yes.
Lucas, I can name others who have made major contributions to our understanding. They have worked primarily at the macroeconomic side of the growth story.
And
Recently, others have begun to make valuable contributions to the microeconomic side
and you would
of
be
the analysis.
you would be well acquainted to them, they being your close colleagues.
That's right.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And I am an admirer of their work.
And yours. I am an admirer of yours. Let's just put that in perspective. But is there coming to be a synthesis between them, or is there coming to do you think we have a new initiative that might be on the horizon, to use loosely the vision thing, or have we got it pretty well in order and just let's, as the British would say, muddle through or move along with what we've got? We've got the fix. There's some people who say we've got the system now, we understand, everything's in place, and let's just do it. Or do we need new vision or new...
we do still...
New vision, paradigm vision, or not?
We do need further insights, further analysis, because, and this is where the line about a performance of Hamlet with the Prince of Denmark missing comes in.
You had come up with that, and then you went to his writing, and he had come up with it 40 years before?
It's actually, it goes further than that, because it was a common way of expressing things in England in the 1930s. You know, I was taught by a great scholar that anyone who claims to know the original source of anything is taking a terrible risk.
Yes, indeed. Okay. Yeah.
You know, I was taken to Washington's Crossing by a member of the English House of Lords, who led me to a bronze plaque where it said, dated about 1830, never have so many owed so much to so few.
Mr. Churchill, yeah?
Yes. So I will not claim to have invented the Hamlet.
Oh, no,
But nor did Schumpeter.
Yeah, neither did he. It had been there before.
But he had used it for the same purpose that I did. That was the point. And the point is that there is still one, maybe more, but at least one crucially missing part of the story. And that is, what is it that is different about the free market economy that puts it so far ahead of any other form of economy in this one respect, in terms of the incredible abundance that it produces for society?
Well said. I'm sorry we've run out of time. Maybe this could be chapter 1. We could do another chapter. We're just starting, and it's been your pleasure to have the perceptions of William Baumol. And he's at the New York University macroeconomist, economist extraordinaire. Thank you very much for the lesson and for learning. I appreciate very much not only your coming into Conversations and Manhattan Network, for all your work. I congratulate and thank you very, very much for that and for coming into the program.
And thank you for the opportunity.
Not at all. My pleasure. It's your pleasure to have his perceptions. We invite you to tune in. We'll be coming back again next week on Conversations, same time. That's it for now. Thank you very much for viewing. Once again, Professor Baumol, thank you for coming in. Until next time. Okay. That was pretty...
Now can I say the unprintable?
No, don't say anything unprintable. We're still maybe recording.